Hey guys, and welcome back to Gap Grace Point Online. Today we carry on with our covered series and we look at private and public. Now, a couple of weeks ago we looked at one of the critical themes that we can talk to someone about anything no matter what. Last week we looked at our networks, and those are the people that we can talk to about anything no matter what it is. We looked at our hands as a guideline to know who those people are, and we said that God is on our network as our best network person, but that we are in the palm of his hand, that we are held and covered and protected by him. The other one of our fingers shows us who else is on our network. Remember that the only one that can be family is on your thumb, and the other four are four other trusted adults that we can talk to about anything no matter what it is. So let's get into our lesson today and see what private and public is all about. Do you remember that we said that this series is a little bit different from all the other series we have done this year? Not only do we look at what God says about us being safe and covered by him, but we also look at some practical things and practical ways that we can make sure that we are feeling safe and keeping others around us safe as well. And so today we look at private things, places, behaviors, and parts. This might be a little bit weird and a little bit uncomfortable, but this is something that we need to cover so that we can be feeling safe all the time. Do you know what the difference is between private and public? Well, public things are things that we can do around other people, that we can do while other people are around us and we do not have to worry about covering up. A public place, for example, would be a shopping mall, and a public behavior, for example, would be eating. Can you think of a public item of clothing? This is something that we wear on the outside. It's something that we wear over our bodies, but not necessarily something that covers the special parts of our bodies. For example, a jacket or a pair of shoes would be a public item of clothing. Then we also have public parts of our body. These are the non-special parts of our body that we do not necessarily have to cover up in a special way that we normally wouldn't. This would be our hands, our arms, our feet, and so on. Now, private is a little bit different. Private places would be spaces where we should be alone or other people should not necessarily be present. And private behaviors are things that we do without other people present. For example, a private place would be the bathroom, and going to the bathroom would be a private behavior. Something like showering should also be a private behavior. What do you think of when I say a private item of clothing? This would be something that you wear under your clothes on the outside. For example, your underwear or things like that. These are things that are covered by our outside layer of clothes. And then private parts of our body are those special parts of our body, our special male and female parts that we cover up, for example, covered up by our swimsuits when we go for a swim. Did you know that there's one special part of our body that we cannot cover up, and it's not covered up by a swimsuit, but it is still a private part of our body? That would be our mouths. Now, we can't cover up our mouths because that would just look silly when we try and talk, but it is still a private part of our body. No one can put anything inside of it without our permission. Now, what we need to learn next is what we need to do when someone tries to see or touch our private parts or be present when we are doing a private behavior. We need to say no, go, and tell a trusted adult so that something can be done that we can feel safe again. So we say no assertively, meaning that we don't take no for an answer. We say no, then we go and we tell a trusted adult. Even in the Bible, there were times where people did not necessarily understand what private and public were. So we can look at one example, and that is from a guy called David. Do you remember David? We spoke about him a few weeks ago, and that he was a young boy who defeated his giant fear, which was actually a real giant, and later he becomes the king. Well, there was a time in the reign of King David where there was a great big war, but King David decided instead of going with his army, he was going to stay in Jerusalem. Now, the one night he was walking around on the rooftop of his palace when he looked over and he saw a woman that was busy having a bath. Now, remember, a bath or bathroom is a private place. It is somewhere where no one else should be present. Now, back in the olden days, they didn't necessarily have dedicated bathrooms, but it was still a private behavior, and King David should have known that. So instead of following the rules of public and private, King David watched her and saw that she was really beautiful. At a later stage, he wanted to marry her and even ordered for her husband to be killed because she was already married. God was really angry at David about this. Not only did he not obey the rules of public and private, but he also disobeyed the worship and safety guidelines that we spoke about in the beginning of this series, otherwise known as the 10 Commandments. He disobeyed a great number of them. Can you guess which ones they were? What private and public guidelines do you think David should have known? One of them was private and public behaviors. The other one was private and public spaces. The other one, private and public parts. And lastly, private and public clothing. Bathsheba, the lady that he was watching on the rooftop, also should have done something because her private space was being invaded. She should have said no. She should have gone and told a trusted adult so that she could have felt safe once again. Remember that our body belongs to us and we have a right to say what happens. We need to give permission for someone to touch us or to watch us do a certain thing. Remember, from our head to our toes, we can say what goes. Just like with Bathsheba, from her head to her toes, she should have been able to say what goes and said no, go, and told a trusted adult. And so today we see a few very important things. Firstly, we learn about public and private behaviors. Public is something that we can do in the presence of other people, and private is something that should be done on our own with no other people present. We can also learn that my body belongs to me. I am the boss of my body, and I can say what goes. From my head to my toes, I say what goes. When someone does something we don't like, we need to say no, go, and tell a trusted adult so that we can feel safe again. Remember, our critical catchphrase for today is from my head to my toes, I get to say what goes. That's it from us today here at Gap Gracepoint Online. Don't forget to check in the comments below for your resource sheets for today's activity. Bye guys, see you next week.